In the last episode, Alex and his companions had barely escaped the clutches of Thrane's mercenaries and the deadly swamps of Nefaria, but their respite was short-lived as they regrouped in a secluded encampment, still reeling from their ordeal. My mind was a maelstrom of thoughts, the cryptic visions and ancestral whispers still echoing within me, hinting at a deeper connection to Xanthe's sinister plot. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pulled towards something, but I didn't know what. Lyra's voice cut through my reverie, her words laced with an air of excitement and trepidation. "We've made a discovery, Alex. An ancient text hidden within the Aetherian archives speaks of a long-lost relic forged from the very essence of Aetheria's ley lines." I sat up straight, my heart racing with anticipation. What kind of relic? Lyra's eyes locked onto mine, her gaze burning with conviction. One that could not only defeat Xanthe but also heal the world's fraying fabric. The words hung in the air, a spark of hope igniting within me. "We have to find it," I said, my voice firm with determination. Kael's expression turned grim, his jaw clenched. "We need to be careful. We don't know what kind of traps or dangers Xanthe set in place." Elara nodded in agreement. "And we can't trust anyone, not with the relic's power." Zephyr snorted. "Easy for you to say, Elara. You're not the one with a target on your back." Elara's eyes flashed with anger, but before she could respond, Lyra intervened. "We need to focus. We have a narrow window to infiltrate the Aetherian archives and gather more information on the relic." I took a deep breath, my senses on high alert. "Then let's move. We don't have much time." The city of Eldrita loomed before us, its labyrinthine streets and alleyways a maze waiting to swallow us whole. We navigated the crowded markets, avoiding deadly traps and forging uneasy alliances with local factions. Kael walked beside me, his eyes scanning the rooftops. "You okay, man? You seem a little off." I hesitated, unsure how to articulate the turmoil brewing inside me. The city's ancient heart beckoned us deeper into its depths. As we walked, the air grew thick with anticipation. We were being watched. Suddenly, the sound of steel on steel echoed through the alleyway, and Xanthe's forces ambushed us. In the chaos of battle, a stunning revelation was hurled at us. Xanthe was not the mastermind, but a pawn in a far greater game controlled by a mysterious entity known only as the Archon. The words hung in the air like a challenge. I stared at Xanthe incredulous. "What's going on? Who is this Archon?" Xanthe's expression was twisted in a snarl. "You'll find out soon enough." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Our struggle had only just begun. With a newfound sense of purpose, we steeled ourselves for the ultimate showdown. Previously, Xanthe's expression had twisted into a snarl as he revealed that he was merely a pawn in a far greater game controlled by a mysterious entity known as the Archon. The group stood stunned, their world tilted on its axis as they realized their struggle had only just begun. With a newfound sense of purpose, they steeled themselves for the ultimate showdown. As I gazed into Xanthe's eyes, I saw a flicker of fear, a hint that even he was not fully aware of the Archon's true power. The air seemed to grow colder, the shadows deepening as if the Archon's presence was already looming over us. I felt a shiver run down my spine, my mind racing with questions. Who was this enigmatic being? What were their intentions for Aetheria? Lyra's voice cut through the tension, her words laced with determination. "We need to get out of here, now. We can't take on the Archon's forces in a straight-up fight." She grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the alleyway. "We have to regroup and come up with a new plan." Kael nodded, his eyes scanning the rooftops. "You'll take point. You'll try to draw off any pursuers." He sprinted ahead, his movements fluid and practiced. Elara fell into step beside me, her hand on the hilt of her sword. "We need to be careful. If the Archon is pulling the strings, we don't know what kind of resources they'll throw at us." Zephyr snorted, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "And we can't trust anyone, not even the locals. They might be under the Archon's control." I nodded, my senses on high alert. We navigated the winding streets, using alleys and side streets to evade our pursuers. The city's labyrinthine layout seemed to shift and twist around us, making it impossible to get our bearings. As we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being herded toward some unknown fate. The Archon's presence seemed to loom over us, their power and influence suffocating. We finally reached the outskirts of the city, where Lyra had arranged to meet with a contact from a local faction. The meeting took place in a cramped, smoke-filled tavern, the air thick with the smell of ale and sweat. The contact, a hooded figure named Aaron, leaned forward, their eyes locked onto mine. "I've heard you're looking for information on the Archon. I might have something for you." I leaned forward, my heart racing with anticipation. "What do you know?" Aaron's voice dropped to a whisper. "The Archon is an ancient being, older than even the ley lines. They're a curator of sorts. They seek to reshape Aetheria in their image." Elara's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" Aaron's gaze flicked around the room, as if checking for eavesdroppers. "The Archon seeks to reboot the world's fabric, to remake it in their own image. And they're willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their goal." The words sent a chill down my spine. I thought back to my visions, the ancestral whispers that had been plaguing me. I was starting to realize that my connection to Xanthe's plot ran deeper than I had ever imagined. In that moment, I felt a surge of determination. I would do whatever it took to stop the Archon, to protect Aetheria and its people. The group's resolve seemed to strengthen, our bond forged in the fire of adversity. As we left the tavern, I caught a glimpse of myself in a reflective surface, a shard of broken glass, I think. My eyes seemed different, my expression set in a determined line. I knew that I had grown, that I had found a new sense of purpose. The city seemed to stretch out before us like a challenge, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. We steeled ourselves, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead, our hearts burning with a newfound sense of hope and determination. But as we walked, the shadows seemed to deepen, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the Archon's eyes were already upon us. Previously, the group had just discovered that Xanthe was merely a pawn in a far greater game, controlled by a mysterious entity known as the Archon, a being of immense power and shadowy intentions. This revelation had left them reeling, but also steeled their resolve for the ultimate showdown. As they fled the city, they were determined to regroup and come up with a new plan to take down the Archon. As we walked, the city's twisted streets seemed to writhe around us like a living thing. The flickering torches cast eerie shadows on the walls, making it seem as though the Archon's presence was already closing in around us. I could feel the weight of their gaze upon us, a cold, calculating pressure that threatened to crush our spirits. Lyra's voice was low and urgent as she pushed us to move faster. "We can't stay in one place for too long. The Archon's agents will be swarming the city, looking for us." Her words were laced with a determination that I found reassuring. We finally reached the city's edge, where a makeshift camp had been set up by a group of rebels. They were a ragtag bunch, armed to the teeth and clearly wary of outsiders. Their leader, a grizzled old warrior named Thorn, eyed us warily as we approached. "What brings you to our camp?" Thorn growled, his hand on the hilt of his sword. I took a deep breath, trying to gauge the man's intentions. "We're looking for allies in the fight against the Archon. We have information that could be valuable to your cause," Thorn snorted. "The Archon? You mean the one they whisper about in hushed tones? The one who's been pulling the strings from behind the scenes?" He spat on the ground. "We've heard rumors, but we don't know much." "What makes you think you can take them down?" Elara stepped forward, her eyes flashing with conviction. "We've come too far to turn back now. We have to try." Her words were met with a nod from Thorn, who seemed to be won over by her determination. Thorn nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "All right, you're in. But be warned, we have our own problems to deal with. The Archon's influence is spreading, corrupting even some of our own people." He He paused, his expression turning grim. "We've had incidents. People acting strangely, as if they're being controlled by some unseen force." I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized the true extent of the Archon's power. But I also felt a surge of hope. If we could rally the rebels, we might have a chance to take down the Archon and free Aetheria from their grasp. As we spent the night in the rebel camp, I couldn't help but feel a sense of growth. I had come to realize that my connection to Xanthe's plot ran deeper than I had ever imagined, and that I had a crucial role to play in the fight against the Archon. This newfound understanding gave me a sense of purpose, and I felt a sense of determination that I had not felt before. The next morning, we set out with a small group of rebels, tasked with infiltrating one of the Archon's strongholds. Our mission was to gather intel on the Archon's plans and to sabotage their operations if possible. As we approached the stronghold, I could feel the air thickening with magic. The ley lines pulsed with an otherworldly energy, making my skin crawl. We crept through the shadows, avoiding patrols of heavily armed guards. But just as we reached the entrance, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a young woman, her eyes blazing with an inner fire. She regarded us warily, her hand on the hilt of her sword. "Who are you?" she demanded. I took a deep breath, trying to gauge her intentions. "We're allies," I said. "We're here to take down the Archon." The woman's expression softened slightly. "I'm Lyrian," she said. "I used to be one of the Archon's acolytes, but I saw the truth, and I escaped." Lyrian's words were laced with a deep sadness. I could sense the pain and the fear that drove her. But I also sensed a spark of hope. If she could escape the Archon's influence, perhaps we could find a way to free Aetheria from their grasp. "What do you know?" I asked, my voice gentle. Lyrian's eyes flashed with determination. "I know that the Archon's plan is far more complex than you can imagine. They're not just trying to reshape Aetheria, they're trying to remake the very fabric of reality." Her words sent a chill down my spine. But I also felt a surge of hope. If we could stop the Archon, we might be able to prevent a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. And with Lyrian's help, we might just have a chance to succeed. But as we stood there, the shadows seemed to deepen, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the Archon's eyes were already upon us, waiting for us to make our move. Previously, the group had just met Lyrian, a former acolyte of the Archon who had escaped their influence, and she had revealed that the Archon's plan was far more complex and sinister than they had imagined, threatening not just Aetheria, but the very fabric of reality. Lyrian's words had sent a chill down their spines, but also sparked a sense of hope that they might be able to prevent a catastrophe estrophic proportions. Header started with Sassistant Header, all assistant header, all re as L assistant. No text here. Previously, the group had just met Lyrian, a former acolyte of the Archon who had escaped their influence, and she had revealed that the Archon's plan was far more complex and sinister than they had imagined, threatening not just Aetheria, but the very fabric of reality. Lyrian's words had sent a chill down their spines, but also sparked a sense of hope that they might be able to prevent a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. Lyrian led us through a hidden passage, avoiding the main gates of the stronghold. We moved swiftly, our hearts pounding in our chests. I could feel the weight of the Archon's presence bearing down on us, a crushing pressure that threatened to suffocate us. As we navigated the winding tunnels, Lyrian told us more about her time as an acolyte. She spoke of the rituals and incantations, the slow corruption of her mind and soul. Her words were laced with a deep sadness, and I could sense the pain and the fear that drove her. But I also sensed a spark of hope in her, a spark that I knew I had to fan into a flame. I reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone," I said, my voice gentle. "We're in this together now." Lyrian's eyes flashed with gratitude, and, for a moment, I saw a glimmer of the person she once was before the Archon's influence had consumed her. It was a small moment, but it gave me hope that we could free Aetheria from the Archon's grasp and restore the land to its former glory. We finally reached a large chamber deep within the stronghold, filled with ancient artifacts and forbidden knowledge. Lyrian led us to a large, leather-bound tome adorned with symbols of the ley lines. "This is the Archon's plan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is the key to understanding their true intentions." As we began to study the tome, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The knowledge contained within its pages was dark and twisted, and I knew that we were playing with fire. But I also felt a sense of determination. We had come too far to turn back now. We had to see this through, no matter the cost. As we pored over the tome, we discovered that the Archon's plan was to harness the power of the ley lines to create a device capable of reshaping reality itself. The device, known as the Eternity Engine, would allow the Archon to rewrite the fundamental laws of the universe, bending reality to their will. We knew that we had to stop the Archon, but the question was, how? The Eternity Engine was said to be hidden in a location known only as the Citadel of Eternity, a fortress of unimaginable power and complexity. Lyrian's eyes were haunted as she spoke of the Citadel. "I've heard that it's a place where time and space are distorted," she said, "a place where the laws of reality are twisted and broken." I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized the true extent of the Archon's plan. But I also felt a surge of hope. If we could stop the Archon, we might be able to prevent a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. And with Lyrian's help, we might just have a chance to succeed. We steeled ourselves for the challenges ahead, knowing that our journey was far from over. The fate of Aetheria hung in the balance, and we were the only ones who could save it. But as we stood there, the shadows seemed to deepen, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the Archon's eyes were already upon us, waiting for us to make our move. The air seemed to vibrate with tension as we prepared to face the unknown dangers ahead. I looked at my companions and saw the determination in their eyes. We were in this together, and we would see it through to the end. With newfound resolve, we set out towards the Citadel of Eternity, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The journey would be long and treacherous, but we were driven by a singular purpose: to stop the Archon and save Aetheria from destruction. As we walked, the darkness seemed to press in around us, but we stood tall, united in our quest. The fate of Aetheria hung in the balance, and we were the only ones who could tip the scales. The journey had just begun, and I knew that it would be a long and difficult one. But I was ready. I was ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that I had my companions by my side. Together, we would face the unknown and emerge victorious. The night air was filled with an eerie silence, as if the very land itself was holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. I could feel the weight of the world's expectations on us, and I knew that we had to succeed. But I also knew that we couldn't do it alone. We needed all the help we could get. And that's when I remembered the rebels we had met earlier. They might be able to provide us with the support we needed to take down the Archon. I turned to Lyrian, my mind racing with possibilities. "We need to gather allies," I said. "We can't do this alone." Lyrian nodded, her eyes flashing with determination. "I know people who might be willing to help us," she said. "People who have been fighting against the Archon in secret." I smiled, a sense of hope rising within me. Maybe, just maybe, we could do this. Maybe we could stop the Archon and save Aetheria after all. And with that thought, we set out into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The journey would be long and difficult, but we were driven by a singular purpose: to stop the Archon and save Aetheria from destruction. The darkness seemed to press in around us, but we stood tall, united in our quest. The fate of Aetheria hung in the balance, and we were the only ones who could tip the scales. But little did we know, the Archon was not the only one watching us. A mysterious figure, hidden in the shadows, was pulling the strings from behind the scenes. And their intentions were far more sinister than we could have ever imagined. The game had just begun, and we were about to discover that our struggle was only just beginning. Previously, the group had just met Lyrian, a former acolyte of the Archon who had escaped their influence, and she had revealed that the Archon's plan was far more complex and sinister than they had imagined, threatening not just Aetheria, but the very fabric of reality. Lyrian's words had sent a chill down their spines, but also sparked a sense of hope that they might be able to prevent a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. As Lyrian led them through a hidden passage, Zephyr's thoughts were consumed by the revelations they had just received. The Archon's plan to harness the power of the ley lines to create a device capable of reshaping reality itself was a daunting prospect, and he knew that they had to stop them at all costs. But as they navigated the winding tunnels, Zephyr couldn't shake the feeling that they were being herded towards a trap. He glanced at Lyrian, wondering if she was truly on their side. Suddenly, Lyrian stopped in her tracks, her eyes fixed on something ahead. "Wait," she whispered, her hand on the hilt of her dagger. "Do you hear that?" Zephyr listened, and soon he too could hear the sound of footsteps echoing through the tunnel. They were heavy, deliberate footsteps, and they were getting closer. Lyrian's eyes locked onto his, a fierce determination burning within them. "It's time to face the music," she said, her voice low and deadly. As one, the group drew their weapons, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The footsteps grew louder, and soon a group of shadowy figures emerged from the darkness. But to their surprise, these figures didn't attack. Instead, they formed a semicircle around the group, their eyes fixed on Lyrian. "You're a hard one to find, Lyrian," one of the figures said, its voice dripping with sarcasm. "But I see you found some new friends." Lyrian's eyes narrowed. "Kaelith Sunshadow," she spat, her voice venomous. "I should have known you'd be involved in this somehow." Kaelith, a notorious smuggler and black marketeer, sneered at Lyrian. "You're in a precarious position, Lyrian," he said. "You and your little friends, but I think we can come to some sort of arrangement." Zephyr's instincts screamed at him to be wary of Kaelith, but he also sensed that the smuggler might be their only hope. "What do you propose?" he asked, his voice cautious. Kaelith smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "I can get you into the Citadel of Eternity," he said, "but it won't be easy, and it won't be cheap." Lyrian's eyes flashed with anger, but Zephyr placed a restraining hand on her arm. "Tell us more," he said, his voice firm. Kaelith leaned against the wall, a self-satisfied smile spreading across his face. "The Citadel is a maze of traps and puzzles," he said, "but I have a map. A map that will get you to the heart of the Citadel, where the Eternity Engine is kept." Zephyr's eyes narrowed. "What's in it for you?" he asked. Kaelith's smile grew wider. "Let's just say that I have a vested interest in seeing the Archon fall," he said, "and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen." As Kaelith handed over the map, Zephyr couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, but they had no choice. They had to take the risk. With the map in hand, they set out towards the Citadel of Eternity, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The journey would be long and treacherous, but they were driven by a singular purpose: to stop the Archon and save Aetheria from destruction. As they walked, the darkness seemed to press in around them, but they stood tall, united in their quest. The fate of Aetheria hung in the balance, and they were the only ones who could tip the scales. But little did they know, Kaelith's true intentions were far from pure. He had a hidden agenda, one that would change the course of their journey forever. The game had just begun, and Zephyr was about to discover that their struggle was only just beginning. Previously, Lyrian's revelation about the Archon's plan to reshape reality had left the group reeling, and they were now navigating a hidden passage with their new ally, uncertain if she was truly on their side. The sound of footsteps echoing through the tunnel had led them to a standoff with Kaelith Sunshadow, a notorious smuggler with a vested interest in seeing the Archon fall. With Kaelith's map in hand, they were about to embark on a perilous journey to the Citadel of Eternity to stop the Archon's plan. As they journeyed through the winding tunnels, Zephyr couldn't shake the feeling that Kaelith's involvement was more complicated than it seemed. He glanced at Lyrian, who seemed to sense his unease. Her eyes locked onto his, and for a moment Zephyr thought he saw a flicker of understanding, but it was quickly replaced by a determined look, and she turned back to Kaelith. The group walked in silence for a while, the only sound being the soft rustling of their clothes and the creaking of the ancient tunnel. Finally, Kaelith spoke up, his voice low and gravelly. "We're getting close," he said. "The Citadel of Eternity is just a few miles ahead. But I have to warn you, the journey won't be easy. The tunnels are treacherous, and the Archon's minions are everywhere." Elara frowned, her brow furrowed in concern. "What's the plan, then?" she asked. Kaelith smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Leave that to me," he said. "I know these tunnels like the back of my hand. We'll take a detour through the old dwarven mines. It's the safest way to reach the Citadel." As they turned into the mines, Zephyr was struck by the eerie beauty of the ancient tunnels. The walls were lined with glittering crystals, and the air was thick with the scent of minerals. But despite the tranquility of their surroundings, Zephyr's senses were on high alert. He could feel the weight of the ley lines above them, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. As they walked, Lyra fell back to walk beside Zephyr. "I don't trust him," she whispered, her eyes flicking towards Kaelith. Zephyr nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know what you mean," he said, "but we need him, at least for now." Lyra nodded, her eyes locked onto his. For a moment, Zephyr thought he saw a glimmer of something more in her eyes, something that went beyond mere friendship. But it was quickly extinguished, and she turned back to watch their surroundings. As they journeyed deeper into the mines, the air grew colder and the shadows seemed to grow longer. Zephyr could feel the presence of others, lurking just out of sight. He glanced at Kaelith, wondering if he was leading them into a trap, but for now they had no choice but to trust him. The map was their only lead, and they had to follow it to the end. As they rounded a corner, a blast of icy air hit them, and Zephyr caught sight of a massive cavern ahead. The ceiling disappeared into darkness, and the walls were lined with glittering crystals that refracted the light of their torches. But what caught Zephyr's attention was the figure standing at the far end of the cavern. Tall, imposing, and shrouded in shadows, it seemed to be waiting for them. "Welcome, travelers," it said, its voice like thunder. "I've been expecting you." Zephyr's hand tightened around the hilt of his sword. Who was this mysterious figure, and what did it want from them? But as they approached, Zephyr saw something that made his heart skip a beat. The figure was standing in front of a massive stone door, adorned with ancient runes. And on the door, in letters that seemed to burn with an inner fire, was a single word: Erebus. Zephyr's mind reeled as he stared at the word. Erebus was the name of an ancient cult, thought to be long extinct. What was its connection to the Archon, and what lay beyond the door? As they approached the figure, Zephyr felt a sense of trepidation. They were walking into the unknown, and he wasn't sure if they would ever come out. But then, something unexpected happened. The figure stepped forward, its features illuminated by the torchlight, and Zephyr saw that it was someone he had never expected to see again. "Aaron!" Zephyr whispered, his voice barely audible. Aaron, a former member of their group, thought to be lost forever, smiled weakly. "Zeph," he said, his voice hoarse from disuse, "it's been a long time." Zephyr's mind reeled as he stared at Aaron. What was he doing here, and what did he know about the Archon's plan? As they stood there, frozen in shock, Zephyr felt a sense of hope rising within him. Maybe, just maybe, they had found an ally in the most unexpected of places. But as he looked into Aaron's eyes, he saw something that made his heart sink. A deep-seated fear and a knowledge that seemed to weigh heavily on his shoulders. "What do you know, Aaron?" Zephyr asked, his voice firm. Aaron's eyes locked onto his, and for a moment Zephyr thought he saw a glimmer of the old Aaron, the one they had thought was lost forever. I know that we're running out of time, Aaron said, his voice barely above a whisper. The Archon's plan is just the beginning. Teres, something far more sinister at play, something that threatens the very fabric of reality. Zephyr's eyes narrowed. What did Aaron mean, and what lay ahead? As they stood there, frozen in anticipation, Zephyr felt a sense of determination rising within him. They would face whatever lay ahead together, and they would stop at nothing to save Aetheria. The journey had just begun, and Zephyr was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But little did he know, the stakes were about to get a lot higher.